All right, joining me now, two people who worked on the independent counsel with Ken Starr and Saul Weisenberg, of course. They're both Fox News contributors. And joining me, Kevin Brock, who was appointed Assistant FBI Director for Intelligence by Mueller, and House Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows. All right, Ken, what was Mueller's biggest, for lack of a better word, screw-up today?
A total lack of preparation, or at least the inability, for whatever reason, to communicate, to show mastery or really basic knowledge of the report. So I was stunned, and then I was shocked by Bob's inability to focus, to show that he understood the questions, the constant please repeat the question. Sometimes you do that as a witness to stall and gather your thoughts, but it seemed to be genuine. What was that question? So he was in a state of befuddlement, which became, I think, embarrassing. And then I would just say, early on, I was so glad to see that the issue of exoneration, the idea of a prosecutor taking it on himself, or now we know the team taking it on themselves, the Mueller team, to say this report does not exonerate the president. And we've been saying this for several months now. Totally inappropriate, totally improper. And now we know, Laura, that is much more likely than not something that Bob Mueller did not, in his judgment, come to. It was the judgment of the Mueller team.
Yeah, Mark Meadows, I want to go to you. Now, off to Ken's point, we're going to move to this because he was asked about who appointed him at this hearing. And for those of you who missed this, watch.
Which president appointed you to become the United States Attorney for Massachusetts?
Which senator?
Which president?
Oh, which president? I think that was President Bush.
According to my notes, it was President Ronald Reagan had the honor to do so. Under whose administration?
My mistake.
Congressman, I mean, look, the president's been through hell. His family's been through hell. Yeah. Carter Page, all these people that we don't talk about every night had to hire lawyers. They had to go through all this testimony. They were vilified, called treasonous. And everyone built him up to be this guy, and we cut my soundbite down, but who walked on water.
Right.
I didn't buy it from the beginning. Anytime the elites build up someone to this demigod status, my antenna always go up. I'm sorry. Maybe the nicest guy in the world. This was a sham from the beginning. He was not with it. And he's running this investigation that could affect U.S. geopolitics?
Right. I was right there next to Bob Mueller for the entire judiciary hearing, and it was obvious that he was not prepared and that he didn't have a grasp of the
basic facts of this investigation.
You're exactly right. I mean,
you know more about the investigation. This whole panel knows more about this investigation than Bob Mueller does. Well, after today, that's what we can conclude.
It was very alarming, and that was meant to be a softball question by a Democrat, and it was a swing and a miss, and it was just a sad day.
You worked with him?
I did.
You know him. I assume you think he's a man of great integrity. Your view?
I do, indeed, but I got a lot of text messages and tweets from colleagues, and the operative word of the day seems to be painful. It's not the Bob Mueller we remember, but we all, those of us with white hair, we lose a little bit of verbal dexterity over the years, but I think his basic unfamiliarity with the report itself, having to pull along his deputy for backup, does not inspire confidence, and his answers today did not inspire confidence that he was in command and control.
The deputies seem like caretakers. Okay, I'm going to say it, and people say, oh, you're so... No, this is the U.S. presidency involved. Right. We were led to believe that this was going to be the best of the best, the fairest of the fairest, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Saul, you have been a big defender of Mueller from the beginning. You've never worked with him. But after today, your thoughts?
Well, I've been a big defender of his integrity from the beginning, and I still am a defender of his integrity.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead.
I'm not going to kick him when he's down. Like Kevin, I got text messages from people out of the blue, people I haven't talked to, ex-FBI in years, saying literally, this is not the Bob Mueller that I knew. Something is wrong. I don't know when that started. I do know that, to me, the failure today is a failure of the Democrats. This man said, the report speaks for itself. I don't want to say anything beyond what's in the report. And I think if he had been much sharper than he was today, he still would not have given them what they want to hear. And when you do not give them what they want to hear, they destroy you, as they have been doing all day and they are doing tonight, because they are merciless.
Ken, I had a piece of advice I offered on Twitter today. I kind of held my fire till near the end of the testimony. But my advice was, okay, committee, when you want a really big hearing and a lawyer that you're going to call really doesn't want to testify, that you think is going to make your points, don't bring him to testify. He said he didn't want to testify. And I think maybe he knew he didn't know the underlying facts. We're going to get to some of these facts, like the Steele dossier, in a moment. But he said he didn't want to testify. And Barr said, basically in that letter, stick to the report. He wandered off a few times when he wanted to, when the Democrats asked him some questions, but the Republicans, it was like shut down, not going to answer that question. But he never wanted to do this testimony, Ken.
From what we know, this was just an enormous misjudgment because now that we look back, 2020 hindsight, we now see some of the warning signs. His press conference where he said no questions. I think it's fundamental to a democratic society that people who hold power, as he did at that time, have to be responsive, not just to the Congress of the United States, but to the media. So prosecutors have to be careful about what they say, but he had issued his report. So it was time to answer questions, including the questions that have been raised about the integrity, not of Bob Mueller, but of his team, and especially the political leanings. All that had been in the public domain, but he had never responded to these, I think, very reasonable, in fact, powerful questions. But he said, I'm not going to respond. So I think that was a telltale indicator, a harbinger then of what we saw today.
All right, Congressman Meadows, I want to play this exchange about the Steele dossier. This is what got the whole investigation going. For everybody who's lived under a rock, it was this dossier through Fusion GPS, compiled with supposed sources, the highest levels of the Russian government, all a bunch of phony baloney stuff paid for ultimately by the Clinton campaign. This was the exchange about the Steele dossier.
When did you become aware that the unverified Steele dossier was included in the FISA application to spy on Carter Page?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Your team interviewed Christopher Steele, is that correct?
Not going to get into that.
You can't tell this committee as to whether or not you interviewed Christopher Steele in a 22-month investigation with 18 lawyers.
As I said at the outset, that is one of the investigations that is being handled by others in the Department of Justice.
It was really that moment and one moment before when he said he didn't know what Fusion GPS was all about. When you looked at both of those, you've been covering this. Obviously, it's not just you that's been covering it. It's been all over for 2 years. Adam Schiff's talked about it. Devin Nunes has talked about it. And yet here we are with Bob Mueller not being able to answer just the basic questions of the genesis of this entire investigation. and I think, you hit an earlier point here. The Democrats forced Bob Mueller to do this. It was first that they wanted to wait for the Mueller report, and they got the Mueller report, and then they wanted him to come back, and they wanted him to do a press conference, and then they wanted him to show up. 3 times they've struck out. Now, they're not going to stop here. They're going to get Don McGahn. They're going to try to continue.
They couldn't even pronounce his name today.
They need to stop why they're behind. I mean, right now, they are so behind, they need to just stop. Close the book.
They don't care about what's good for the country. Yeah. And Kevin, this was what Andrea Mitchell said about the line of inquiry about the Steele dossier.
It's shameful that Republicans were so focused on trying to undermine the origins of the investigation that they did not deal with the fact that has been concluded by all of the intelligence agencies under Obama and, of course, their professionals.
Kevin.
Well, this is the gaping hole in the whole investigation. Bob Mueller was handed a mandate to do a counterintelligence investigation. You and I have talked about that. And he ran off and did a criminal investigation, ignoring a lot of the basic counterintelligence questions that should have been asked, and one of them surrounds the whole issue of the Steele dossier and the Russian involvement in that and their efforts through that dossier to manipulate the presidential election.
And Saul, we learned today just how much the Mueller investigation was impacted by this so-called obstruction that they, of course, claimed it never actually happened. Spoiler alert, it wasn't affected at all. Watch.
Were you ever fired as special counsel, Mr. Mueller?
No.
No. Were you allowed to complete your investigation unencumbered?
Yes.
And in fact, you resigned as special counsel when you closed up the office in late May 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Congresswoman Lesko did this in like three questions, Saul. Wasn't impeded, wasn't fired, finished the investigation. Sometimes I'm critical of the Republicans' cross-examination techniques. I sometimes think they need to bring in real pros like you to do the cross-examination. But that was great. She was fantastic.
Well, she was great, but everybody should have taken a crack at that because, as you know, a skilled cross-examiner, having been one yourself, will roll it out and ask 20 questions. You were allowed to talk to the White House counsel, Don McGahn, on multiple occasions. You were allowed to see extensive notes involving conversations between Don McGahn and the president. You were allowed to question anybody you wanted to over X number of people. You were never, did anybody ever claim executive privilege? Did anybody ever claim attorney-client privilege? You literally could have asked 50 or 60 questions like that, and the answer would have been very effective, and the answer would have been nobody ever kept us from questioning anybody except for the president himself, which everybody knows about that issue. And so I would have liked to have seen more of that.
I got you. That's an excellent, excellent point. And Ken, there was another point that we were all talking about before the show, which is we had all these Democrat players who, in any of our law practices, when we take a case, you do a conflict check. You know, and it's like a pain in the neck. It's like, do you ever meet this person? Do you know anyone? It's like the conflict checks are laborious in law firms. Well, this is like a mini law firm, really important, the special counsel's office. You don't want any appearance of conflict, let alone an actual conflict. This is the line of questioning about Jeannie Rhee and Strzok, et cetera. Watch.
Andrew Weissman attended Hillary Clinton's election night party. Did you know that before or after he came onto the team?
Don't know when I found that out.
Are you aware that Ms. Jeannie Rhee represented Hillary Clinton in litigation regarding personal emails originating from Clinton's time as Secretary of State?
Yes.
Did you know that before she came on the team?
No.
When did you first learn of Peter Strzok's animus toward Donald Trump?
In the summer of 2017.
You didn't know before he was hired?
I did not know that.
Ken, the whole panel has to weigh in on this. What do you do for basic conflict or appearance of conflict checks for an operation as important to the U.S. government, Constitution, frankly, the world, as this team was?
You vet, you do your due diligence, you ask the key questions. It's sort of, is there anything as when you're being considered for an executive branch appointment, confirmation hearings, is there anything that could be embarrassing to the President of the United States? And so I think Bob, or whoever was doing it, but it should have been Bob Mueller himself, should have said, I need to know, I'm not asking you anything about your politics. I respect the First Amendment and so forth, but I need to know, is there anything, in light of the fact this is going to be, by definition, a politically charged investigation, about your background, what you've done that could prove embarrassing to the investigation in terms of the appearance of impartiality? That was so important, and my word, given the group of people he had around him. But of course, he must have known about Andrew Weissman's reputation professionally, which he continues to stand for. But he should have asked those tough questions.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Meadows, this is basically like, did anyone do a conflict check? I know Saul's going to say they should have asked that. Who did the conflict check or the appearance or the, do you have anything embarrassing?
Well, the president of the United States did. He's been talking about this for 2 years, about the conflict.
He didn't hire him.
But when we look at this, you know, just the basic items of credibility.
Right.
When you look at what Bob Mueller said today, you go, well, gosh, you want to have a fair and impartial group of prosecutors that are going after.
But that's why building him up from the beginning as the demigod of the greatest of the greatest. no one would question him because they said, this is Bob Mueller. You can't question Bob Mueller.
Well, but
Bob Mueller wasn't questioning Weissman or whoever was doing it. He delegated it. Was he more of a figurehead, Kevin, in this investigation? After you saw this performance today, was he kind of the figurehead? He came into the office every day. I don't know what he did at the desk, but he might have done something. But he did not know anything about Jeannie Rhee was his law partner at Wilmer.
Whether he was or he wasn't, that's what he projected today, that he was a figurehead. And that's unfortunate because he's a much more capable person than that. This is the Achilles heel of his investigation, is the perception that it was front-loaded with Democrats. And he wasn't able to get around that perception and objection today.
And Saul, on the podcast today, you and I talked about this, but that Politico Morning Consult poll that came out shows that even more Democrats now, from April to today, are saying that this investigation was not handled fairly. That percentage has gone up 15 percentage points. So even among Democrats, that distrust is growing. Obviously, all Republicans think it was unfair. But so this is not going in a good direction for the Democrats, given the time, the effort, the promises. Don Jr. is going to be in prison. And more people are saying, well, let's get going here. Let's wrap this up.
I think most Americans actually have a sense of what happened here. Number one, the collusion / conspiracy / coordination, whatever you want to call it, the president is totally exonerated in that. Number two, on what people call the obstruction front, he overreacted. He did some things that were not wise, that were disturbing, that he shouldn't have done. But there's probably not an obstruction case here. And if there was, he's the president and we can't indict him. So let's move on. I really think in some kind of sense, most Americans think that way. And you're not going to move the ball any further. Justice Holmes once said, what is it? A page of history is worth a volume of logic. And the fact is, number one, this isn't Watergate, but number two, the Republicans control the House in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, and that means the Democrats were not able to start issuing subpoenas and to start building up the kind of investigation that happened in Watergate. And that's just reality. That's just politics.
Congressman Meadows, Nancy Pelosi reacted today and said this. Let's watch.
I do believe that what we saw today was a very strong manifestation, in fact, some would even say indictment, of this administration's cone of silence in their cover-up. This is about the oath we take to protect and defend the Constitution.
Someone...
Yeah, I don't know what she was tuned into. But
she's using the word indictment. To your point, to Ken's point, Saul, Kevin, they're not letting this go. The language is for 2020. This is all setting the table for 2020,
hearing. That's
right?
all this was. That's exactly what it was, a 2020 hearing, and it had no basis in trying to get to the underlying crime, which I believe is how this whole investigation started. That's what Bill Barr and that's what John Durham...
This cannot happen to another president.
I agree.
This cannot happen to another president. Cannot be done. Panel, thank you very much for being here tonight.